especially at arrival, dismissal, lunchtime, uh, and knowing that we may have a number of families show up because it's the first day of school and they have not done anything to register. Um, in addition to that, uh, a central office staff member will be on campus the first 7 days of school. So every campus will have at least one central office staff member that will be there. They'll be there at arrival, at dismissal, and then at lunchtime, having that central office staff member available. Again, another set of hands. And then we've been talking a lot about PPE. One of the things that just came in that we are almost completely done installing are floor graphics. And so here's an example, or two examples rather, of the floor graphics that have been installed across the district. Remind people to go one way in hallways and play it smart, keep 6 feet apart.
On the substitution, do we have enough, or
So it's going to be a challenge. So we have a number, Michelle reported this morning, that we have a number of substitutes have said that they're willing to sub, but they want to wait and kind of see how the first part of the year goes. And so uh, if we have a number of absences, we're going to have a challenge filling those vacancies with substitutes. What is, and that's not unique to Vernon CISD. It's going to be a statewide issue, not having enough substitutes available, especially if you're going, if you hit a run of having to have staff members quarantined or become COVID-19 positive. Clay, would you provide an update? I think you're going to touch on a little food service and transportation.
Yes, sir. So transportation, as Josh reported, he has the routes built at about 80% built to be able to get the kiddos here in a safe fashion. And then all he has to do left is add any new kids and get those routed. So he feels like he's actually better than he normally is 3 days before school starts. He had all his drivers report back today, and he said that was, take a deep breath after lunch because it all gets real when everybody's there. One thing we have made the decision, and we're going to have 2 adults on every bus for the first day. So especially that morning. So when a young second grader gets on the bus, to support the driver and to support the kiddos, if somebody step off the bus, welcome them to the bus. Hey, you have your mask on to try not to make it quite so intimidating, and also ease the burden on the drivers, because the drivers have a lot going on that morning. So we're going to try to accomplish that with transportation staff, and then I'll be on a bus, and we're trying to recruit some other folks to wish those kids and make that morning ride just a little bit easier for them. But everything seems to be rocking along at transportation. Food service, we have ordered and we'll talk about it in purchasing, plexiglass dividers to get some good distance between students or separate students, but they are not expected to arrive till about August 27th. They had said 3 weeks from the date of purchase, so there's no indication that that's going to happen. So we have challenged the principals, and they have done an outstanding job of trying to buy us those 10 days and keep kids 6 foot apart. So you've heard us say there's no way to do it 6 foot apart in the cafeteria. But since we're buying the dividers, we don't want to just give away the 8 days. We want to try to keep that distancing. So they've done an excellent job of spreading the kiddos out. And there's going to be kiddos for the first 10 days, eating in the gym, eating in different foyers, eating in different classrooms. We're going to provide good supervision and spread those kids out. And I think they all have a plan. And we were talking this morning about middle school having 2 lunch coverages when central office goes there for down the hill and up the hill. And which I know it needs to be about 14 because middle school can be spread out everywhere. You walk somewhere, you're going to run into somebody eating lunch. But we are right on schedule with that. And the other piece on food service, we are highly encouraging parents to pay for their meals online this year, just to keep kiddos from handling cash and adding that level of interaction between staff and students. And with that being said, the district has decided to pick up the fee, the online fee. So you parents, when you put money on your lunch card, there's a fee that the parents picked up. The district has decided we are going to pick up that fee to help encourage those parents to make the purchase online and avoid that content. So we're ready to roll.
Very good. Thank you, Clay. Any questions for Clay? Kurt Jones is on the line, and we've already experienced our first home athletic event. We've got another big one coming up on Thursday. It's our first scrimmage against another opponent. So, Kurt, you want to talk a little bit about the ticketing for that, and answer any questions there might be.
You bet. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, as you know, we've moved to online ticketing for all of our events at this time. And like Keith mentioned, we have a football scrimmage Thursday evening at Bulldog Field versus Lake Belton. And this will be all three of our groups scrimmaging. So it's freshman, JV, and varsity football. We'll get started around 4:30, and we'll probably finish up around 8 o'clock, 8:30. But we are selling tickets to this scrimmage with all tickets being $1 plus processing fees since we're using the hometown ticketing system. We normally do not charge admission to scrimmages, but this will allow us a little bit of a trial run in selling tickets to an event at Bulldog Field since we haven't done that yet this year or ever that I know of. It'll also allow us to track the 50% capacity rule, although I do not think that we'll get to 50% capacity on Thursday, but we'll still be able to kind of look at where we're at with the number of tickets that we sell and how that looks at Bulldog Field. All proceeds for this are going to go to the Texas High School Coaches Association Benevolence Fund, which aids student athletes in a time of need. So this will be an Our Day to Shine event, which you'll remember we did last year at one of our scrimmages, part of the THSCA Our Day to Shine campaign. So that's kind of the information on our scrimmage Thursday. We're also going to be posting some ticket information for volleyball games this weekend. We'll get that posted by Wednesday afternoon. I don't know if you have any questions about just our ticketing in general to our events right now, but I'll try to answer those if you have anything for me.
I guess I would add, it's not something we wanted to do, but given the 50% capacity, it's disappointing that we're not able to offer the passes that we've had in the past, but we're really looking forward to the following season where maybe we can get back to some normalcy and be able to accept all the passes that we've been able to in the past. So we're just going to keep asking for people's patience and grace as we do have to do some things differently. And then I guess, why don't you just make sure you share about the, for someone maybe that can't make the game, what we are, and that's happening.
So the UIL, I think most of you know, the UIL loosened their grip on live streaming varsity football games this year. And so we are planning to live stream all of our home varsity football games. We're also going to live stream our home varsity volleyball games. We have a meeting set up actually tomorrow. Damon Byerly here in town is going to help us with the live streaming. And so I'm going to be in a meeting with Damon and Philip Molina tomorrow to discuss the details of that a little bit more. When we're on the road, it'll be up to the visiting team to provide the live stream link, but we feel like we'll be able to do that to all of our road games as well. So that'll be something new. It'll be something good for those that are still at home to be able to watch the game live. And we'll connect that in when we're doing that here at Bulldog Field. We'll connect that in to Mark Edmondson's audio.
So it'll be interesting. UIL keeps saying that this is a one-year rule change, but boy, if you give everyone in the state of Texas the opportunity to watch some high school football, it sure does seem like that's gonna be a hard thing to put back in the bottle, but we'll see.
Where's that gonna be available? On the website or where?
Yes, we'll make it available on the website, at least in one spot on our school website, if not a couple of different spots, but we'll put that information out there to the entire general public once we have that specific site. It'll be similar to the way you've found Mark's audio stream in the past.
Thank you, Kurt, and we're gonna wrap up this report with teaching and learning. Update from Dr. Jones.
So we have been really busy trying to help equip our teachers as much as we can. They have a lot of so much new that they are learning. I'm so proud of them because I know that they're nervous and I know that they feel a little overwhelmed, but they have been jumping in and trying new things. So as you may know, our teachers are going to be managing both in-person and remote students. Even though a significant number of our students chose to do remote instruction, whenever you look at the way that lays out in actual scheduling in the day, there's not a way to pull a teacher off a team without the in-class still being difficult to accomplish. And so, and thinking about students going back and forth, you know, they have the opportunity to change their mind at 6 weeks and be in person or remote, or if they go quarantine for a couple weeks at a time. That's just really hard for teachers, hard for kids if they're constantly having to change their assigned teacher whenever they're doing this back and forth. And so they'll have students who are both remote and in person. And so the principals are carving out some time in the day. It looks different on each campus so that they can try to touch base with kids, especially with the older ones. It won't be every day, it might be once a week, that they try to do some synchronous video conferencing or talk on the phone or something like that. But then they will also be able to, the kids will also be able to optionally log in, listen to some live stream lessons. If it's a difficult concept, they really need to hear it explained, then the teachers will publish. I'd recommend that you log in and listen whenever I'm doing the lesson at these times. But if the family can't, for whatever reason, or student doesn't need it, because that subject is their jam, then great, they don't have to. But we would recommend it for their optimum learning. And so to help get teachers ready, one of the events that we held last week was a blended learning symposium. That was put on by teachers for teachers, for the most part, and they rocked it. We've never put an event like that on before. I've never participated in a virtual symposium before. And so I've been kind of looking at some of the reflections that they've had as they wrapped up that event, and it was a lot of, I have so many new tools. Now I know who I can call because I see that they've tried it before, and I'm so glad that so-and-so helped me. Everything from that to, oh my gosh, this was harder than I thought to get in and log on and get started. I'm glad that I felt this before I asked my students to, because now I know I need to allow more time to get my kids up and running and finding things. So it was really eye-opening. Then even for our department, I made a mistake this morning and sent out the wrong message to the whole class and had to send it again. Oh, I hit the wrong button, I'm sorry. So we're all, learning how to navigate some of these new tools. And so just being able to be in it together, I think has been a positive. It allows us to be real with each other and see that it doesn't have to be polished, perfect to be good. And to not let the enemy, not let perfect be the enemy of good. So that's one of the events that we plan to support teachers and help them learn. And we'll be writing that into the remote instruction plan that we'll have to submit to the state. We plan to bring that plan to you at the August 31st meeting, but that's one of the early events for professional development. One of the other significant things in that plan that we're working through is how to help our teachers with attendance whenever the kids engage outside of the class period hours. And so it would be a really tall order to ask a teacher to take attendance during the class period or at the regular attendance time, and then ask them to take attendance again at the end of the day to see if the kid might have logged on and done some work, and then to ask them to take attendance again the next morning to see if the kid logged on sometime in the evening before midnight. And so to keep track of that that's just a lot to ask, because then the next day they have a whole new day of attendance to take care of too. And so we're looking at some forms and some automated ways to be able to generate a report to the campus office and have someone who can help with the after hours part because they just haven't seen them yet, someone in the office would be able to look at a report and say, well, but they engaged later, so I can change that to present. And so that's another, interesting wrinkle with the rules of remote learning, that just the logistics, are a challenge. Through all this, we're trying to be really sensitive to the social emotional needs that our students are gonna come back with too. We know that for some of them, this whole experience is kind of traumatic. And for others, they just haven't been around people a lot, and they've got to refresh a little bit of the soft skills. And so our teachers, as part of their required training, went through some trauma-informed practices training, and so they learned what happens to students' brains whenever they've been through trauma, and how students can react if it's outside of their window of tolerance for stress. And so just to give them some ideas of what to look for whenever a student's behaving in a dysregulated way, and then some strategies of, rather than address the behavior head on, try some strategies to see if it's related to the way that they're managing stress, and see if they can come down and start regulating themselves, and then you can have a logical conversation. We're also our campuses are not gonna focus on heavy academic content those first couple days. Those days are all about not only the safety routines, the procedures, making sure everybody knows how to log into everything, but also a time for community building. They haven't been together in a long time, and so to be able to get back a little bit of that sense of community. In fact, with our blended learning symposium, we had some competencies that those sessions were built around. One of those 3 competencies is the ABCs, so it's access, belonging, and crafted content. The B for belonging, we deliberately wanted for that to be one of those 3 competencies, because it's going to be a challenge to foster that sense of belonging and community in remote settings. It's really important to a kid's social emotional development. And then finally, our intervention counselor, as well as our parent resource center, they're already starting to think of ways that they can support families of remote learners, whether that be a parent support group. Denton is thinking about, family book clubs for remote learners, so that they can have some kind of connection with other people, even though they need to stay home for whatever reason their family needs to be home. So those are some of the irons that we have in the fire, and we'll have more professional development opportunities for sure as the year rolls on.
So, any questions in thinking about the start of school that you might have that we haven't covered?
I have a question about, I know that high school's gonna go block. So how does that work with the remote learner? I mean, if a class is 90 minutes, then how does that correspond with each other?
So it's just that they still will have the same amount per week, but it is every other day. So instead of 45 every day for your in-person kids, that does mean that for the time that the teacher needs to publish a link to a synchronous live stream lesson, that will just have to be very intentionally scheduled in advance, so the student knows not only what time, but which day. So the students are scheduled in, like, they'll get a schedule that looks like an in-person kid schedule, because some of them may choose to come back. And so we have to be ready to have a seat for them the second 6 weeks if they come back. And so they actually have a schedule, and they're in a section at the same time as in-person kids. And so if they need to join a live stream lesson, they would do so at that time. Now, we have a few kids who are choosing to come in person for extracurriculars. Well, that means they've got some commute time when they leave. And so if they're gonna miss the class, then if there's another section that's meeting, even if it's taught by a different teacher, they'll have the links to the other section meetings. And so they could choose to join a different one if they need to hear that content. But as far as the due dates and the engagement, it's just that they would have 2 days instead of 1 day, much like the face-to-face kids. And middle school is also on semi-block. And so they have 2 periods in the beginning and the end that are daily, and then they have blocks for the 3 in the middle. So everybody is learning lots of news all at one time, but it does slow things down for the remote teaching and the remote learning, because you don't have to try to manage 9 different periods in a day. it lets you have a bit more flexibility, where you might need to.
But when I've said that we're having to reinvent everything about school, I mean down to just this idea of, a couple of weeks ago, we kind of cued in on the fact that, well, it's gonna be really challenging to figure out what kids engaged online when they have until 11:59. So, I mean, they could do nothing and log in at 6 o'clock that night and knock out all of their work, because that's the way they want to do their work, and we wouldn't know. We'd already be counting them absent. So we've got to have a system to come back and make sure we can capture that. And so there is nothing easy about school during the COVID pandemic, just because we can't rely on saying, well, we'll just do this piece of school like we did last year. Almost everything we're doing is having to be done in a different way. So.
We have two different systems of online that we're looking at, is that right? The Google Classroom and or not? So where are we now on that?
Are you talking about the Schoology that the state provided?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have not started working with Schoology at all yet. So we'll be Google Classroom as our platform because it's familiar and everybody knows it now. Schoology will do some great things that Google Classroom can't. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? So Schoology would be a paid system if the state hadn't purchased it. So it would do attendance tracking, and it would keep attendance, participation on video conferences if you do it within the platform. And there would be a lot of advantages going to that. But to have every teacher and every family learn a new tool at the same time that all this is happening, we just felt like was beyond what we could ask at this time. And so as we get started, once we get started, I'm very interested in talking with teachers about, can we start stepping into this, maybe make a switch sometime in the middle of the year, have a few early adopters, whether it be a grade level or some way to kind of try it out and see does it really make life easier? Because if it makes life easier, it might be worth learning and doing.
Okay, so the reason I'm smiling behind the mask. The reason I asked, the daughter-in-law is teaching in another district that dumped their current system, and they're all having to relearn, and it is absolute disaster right now, because like you said, all the parents that were used to using it the way they were using it, and so I congratulate y'all on being sensitive to the change and everything else changing. That was a huge smart move.
Well, the other reality too is that Schoology really doesn't have the capacity to provide the quality training for everyone, and so we were going to be limited to just a handful of people three people on a trainers model, and not even necessarily when we needed the training, and so just lots of unknowns at the very beginning. And yeah, I mean, again, when you're having to change even how you take attendance, I mean, that's a level of change that our staff has not had. Well, I don't know if any staff has ever had to experience all the changes that are on the plate this year, and there is nothing easy about change.
Well, I think you're seeing some of these other districts push their start date, and they blame it on COVID, but it's probably technology that's causing it, right? Because they're not ready technically.
So that concludes our report.
That gets us to item 4 on the agenda, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the amended order calling for a school board election on Saturday, November 3rd, 2020, which includes appointing Doug Ferguson, Burnett County Elections Administrator, as the early voting clerk for Burnett County. Cindy Ware, Llano County Elections Admin for early voting clerk for Llano County. And Christopher Davis, Williamson County Elections Administrator, as the early voting clerk for Williamson County. And just to save a little time, this motion can be used.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion been made and seconded to approve this. And, any comments or questions on it?
Just, when the governor orders you to change your election, it doesn't make sense that we then are required to approve an amended order calling for the election that they made us change. And this will cost the district more money than what a typical May election would cost, because we are having to contract with all three entities. We'll be bringing the contracts to you at the August 31st meeting. I will share voter registration. October 5th is the last day to register to vote. Encourage, be sending out a note to our staff tomorrow encouraging them to register to vote if they're new to Burnett County. And early voting has been expanded. So it's October 13th through the 30th, longest early voting ever. Most early voting is 8 to 5, except on Thursday, October 29th, and it's 7 to 7. And then just as a reminder, place 3 is Suzanne Brown, incumbent, has filed. She is running unopposed. And then place 7 is Mark Kincaid, incumbent, and then Tricia Carr, also filed to run.
All right, you know the motion, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Get this, item 5 is discussion and possible action regarding approval of ratification of an operation of connectivity interlocal acquisition agreement.
And so you'll recall back on July 20th, we discussed with you Operation Connectivity. That is the state's program that's going to allow us to buy 300 hotspots at approximately half the cost that it typically would cost us. The board, during the July 27th meeting, specifically provided me purchasing authority, but once we got the details on how to purchase the hotspot, we found out that purchase was going to have to be done through an interlocal agreement with the Region 4 Service Center. And Ed Code says that any interlocal agreement by a government entity has to be approved by the government entity. And so I signed on behalf of the Board of Trustees, and the action that you're being asked to take tonight is to ratify the interlocal agreement for Operation Connectivity with Region 4 Service Center in order to make the purchase of the 300 hotspots.
Move to approve it, I move approval of to ratify the Operation Connectivity Interlocal Acquisition Agreement, authorize superintendent and other appropriate district personnel to take all necessary actions under such agreement.
Second.
Big words.
That wasn't 50 cents. And he's approachable. All right, motion been made and seconded to ratify the Operation Connectivity Interlocal Acquisition Agreement and authorize the superintendent and other appropriate district personnel to take all actions under such agreement. Any comments or questions?
How do we distribute those? How do we determine who needs them?
Well, we're going to have a criteria. So those that are free and reduced lunch, start with 1 per home.
More? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 6 is discussion and possible action regarding approval of resolution granting additional leave to staff. Ms. Gilmore.
On page 34 of your board book, you will find the information and the resolution for this. As you know, we have a huge interest in protecting the health and safety of all of our students, and we understand that staff members may have to take more leave this year due to isolation and quarantine orders. As a reminder, I'm going to go over just briefly with you what we provide for the staff currently. We provide 4 local leave days and 5 state days. And then due to the Families First Corona Act, they're going to provide 10 additional paid sick leave days. We are recommending 5 additional days called extended COVID leave. And those would be for staff members who had to quarantine or isolation orders resulting from close contact while at school as determined by the county medical advisor, or if a lab confirmed positive COVID-19 diagnosis. Also, as a reminder, the additional leave days can only be used once, cannot be used for any other purposes, and cannot be carried over to the next school year. So we are wanting to provide 5 extra COVID extended leave days for our staff members. And just as a reminder too, this would be paid out of fund balance, which Clay will be presenting at the August 31st meeting. And if
So
you have
really,
any-
for this school year, that would be 24, if all COVID-related leave had to be used, there are 24 days available to a staff member that's unique to this year, not even including what they maybe have banked from previous years.
And just to preview kind of what Michelle mentioned with fund balance, so we'll ask you guys to assign an amount of fund balance, kind of like our maximum amount we think we'll use, and then we'll likely report to you monthly, if this is how much was expended this month, because we would not anticipate spending the full amount, hopefully, because our folks are staying healthy and won't need to use it, but we will, report to you every month to see how much of that assigned actually gets expended.
And that's a good point, because, I mean, the 5 days, we're taking action to approve these extra 5 days. So, of course, that's gonna cost locally. But I think it's important for people to know too, these 10 federal mandated days, there's no funding associated with that. So we're on the hook to completely fund that too. And so that's why, in our conversations, we believe it's just best to go ahead and assign the fund balance, have the money out there, earmarked for this leave, the 10 days and these 5 extra local leave days.
What do you do if you can't have a substitute for that?
Well,
What happens?
and, you know, the reality is that happens sometimes even in non-COVID years. And so, what's difficult is in non-COVID years, sometimes you combine classes. Sometimes a teacher will stand between 2 doorways, and go back and forth. You know, you can't combine classes and increase the number of students in a space. And so we're just gonna have to get really creative in those times where we end up without a substitute. We're hoping, you know, the run rate during the first 6 weeks is better, where some of our substitutes wanna come back. And then, when we do have, when we do have any absences, that we'll have, substitutes to accommodate. But, I mean, in our mind, we're preparing to have days where we do not have substitute coverage for all absences. We're also trying not to harm ourselves. So, you know, we've put pretty much a moratorium on any type of professional development that would cause, any of our staff to have to go somewhere. We're working closely with Kurt and our coaches to make sure that if a group of coaches have to leave at 3, sometimes in the past, they may have put in a half-day absence, because we clock absences by half day. Well, we're not doing that anymore. We're gonna figure out a way to get the class covered just for a little bit of time, instead of trying to have a substitute come on to the campus.
For the approval of the resolution permitting the use of up to 5 full days of paid leave, COVID extended leave.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the resolution permitting the use of up to 5 school days of paid leave, for COVID extended leave. Any more comments or questions? If none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. It's the standard. Item 7 is discussion and possible action regarding approval of revisions to the 2020-2021 student code of conduct. Dr. Jones.
All right, on page 37, you'll see, a summary of changes that we're proposing to the code of conduct, and just add some explicit language that will it will communicate very clearly to families the expectation that disciplinary authority does extend to online learning, and also that remote instructional days do not count towards the fulfillment of an expulsion order. Those 2 revisions are on page 43. And then page 74, respectively, in your packet.
Make a recommendation, we, accept the revisions to the student code of conduct.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the revisions to the 2020-2021 student code of conduct. Any comments or questions?
Thank you for sending that out early so we could go through it. But that's a real good example of some of the things you changed to just because of the situation, and little details,
Adjustment.
and there will be 100 more.
There will.
Hopefully it'll only be 100.
Good call.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Gets us down to number 8, discussion and possible action regarding approval of purchases in excess of $25,000.
Yes, sir. So in your board book, you're provided with a list of, COVID-19 purchases, and, in each individual purchase, they don't exceed $25,000 and require board approval, but as cumulative purchase, we're talking about purchasing for COVID, actually, it's $259,000, $447. So, Keith and I visited and said, you know, with the resolution that giving Keith some purchasing authority and the different little topics that we don't necessarily know for sure, if the law says we need to get you guys to approve this, but we sure thought it was a good idea, to approve, purchases at this level. So you'll see all the different items from masks to gloves to gowns to, stickers that we're purchasing to prepare for Thursday. Last Friday, we got a lot of the stuff delivered to the campuses for the students, and things are still rolling in on a daily basis. We still, all vendors still say, oh yeah, you'll have it by Thursday, and we remind them it's Monday, but, they still seem confident we're gonna get it. So we would ask the board to approve these COVID purchases as one cumulative purchase, as we get ready to try to make school as safe as possible for students and staff. And on the list there also, you'll see is some of the items, donated by TA or provided by TA, so we listed those as well. And we're grateful for what they gave, but you see there was a whole lot more, that we had provided to get ready for school.
There's your cafeteria dividers too.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Well, and even like the hand sanitizers, the wipes, that is not for a full year. We're estimating about 2 months worth, and what Charlie knows is that he's got to live, about a month and get a run rate, and then we've got to put in another order so that we make sure that we've got the next round, but we wanted to kind of at least get 2 months and then refine what our true run rate was on the use of all the hand sanitizers and wipes and all of that. Probably the one thing that the wipes are the biggest challenge right now, having those available for teachers to be able to use and students to be able to use to wipe down their desk in between classes at secondary.
And you'll notice we did separate out, we bought some, pediatric or smaller masks and shields, and, I'm not a cutesy kind of guy, but the little mask came in that swing, it's cute as a big thing. It's a pretty tiny, but, we're gonna get all those sent out, take care of kiddos.
I had a question on it, I'm sorry, Avery. So for, say, kindergarten, primary students, I just think about the articulation and everything that is so important. Will they be able to wear a shield without a mask?
Yes. So in our plan, pre-K and K are not required to wear a mask at all.
I wanted to make sure.
Every classroom will have a face shield, and what we've said is that teachers may ask students to put on the face shield for certain activities.
Be a flying saucer.
Possibly sometimes.
Slingshot.
And just to put it in perspective, I mean, this is $259,000 worth of stuff. And the leave, I mean, just the 5 additional days is gonna be upwards of another $200,000. And so, I mean, COVID-19 is not an inexpensive pandemic to address. And we've had the conversation among our leadership team, how thankful we are that we're part of an organization who has a healthy fund balance to be able to make these purchases. Imagine if you're sitting in a district that doesn't have fund balance, and so you don't even have the means to make the decisions that we're making for the benefits of our staff and our students.
But if you're down 250 students in that carrier, it's even worse.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Foster. I'm almost thinking of that already.
Glad to help.
Yes, sir. I did say in a meeting the other day, I said, y'all have officially broke me. I couldn't even fight it anymore. But I bounced back and argued with Rachel. That's not
hey, in the first 10 days, if we don't see that number rebound, you may see all of us driving around in pickup trucks. Hey, you. You look like you could be in school. Come on. The good news about that, just as a reminder, we do have 12 weeks of grace. And so there is 12 weeks of hold harmless. And because our past 3-year run rate has been so positive in terms of our ADA, we're actually, those 12 weeks, we're gonna make a little bit more money even if our students don't show up like they're supposed to. So we do have a little bit of time to go out and find those kids and do a campaign to get people to come back if they're not here in the first 2 to 3 weeks of school, so.
I move for the approval of COVID-19 related expenditures as presented.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion is made and seconded to approve the, order of purchases in excess of 25,000 as presented. Any more comments or questions?
Is there a possibility that federal funds come available for reimbursement?
I think there is.
I think there is too.
Yep.
I think there is too.
We are certainly tracking it all.
Okay.
To keep that in line, yes, sir.
It is a campaign.
Very true.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 9 is consideration and action on a resolution providing for the defeasance and calling for the redemption of certain current outstanding district obligations at the amount in the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Delegating to certain district officials and staff the authority to effectuate matters herein resolved and other matters in connection therewith. Sound like a lawyer, but
Absolutely.
I told Jill Littis that I know they make up some of these words just to make us say it and feel stupid.
Looks like dinner at my house.
Yes, sir. So, we did a bond defeasance back in 2018, and if you recall, we probably talked about that for 2-3 months and then went through all the steps, and it was about a 6-month process. So I sure appreciate you guys, being willing to listen to this tonight and possibly be willing to take action. But Dan Wegmiller contacted me in early August and said, hey, you know, we've been talking about these defeasances. It sure would be nice if you could get one done in August. And, it basically sets up the timing where you can do one each fiscal year and take care of the surplus tax collection. So we had surplus tax collections come in, we need to identify these funds are going to this. And so he said, it sure would be nice, and told him when we had board meetings, he said, well, if you can get it on the agenda, I'll get you the language and we can try to get it done. And that's why we didn't get to have a report on this for y'all and prepare you. But since we did it back in 2018, it is the same process. So we have the surplus, interest-seeking fund balance, and then we have some surplus collections. So we are asking the approval to do a $1.5 million bond defeasance. And I'm even getting confused with the numbers. The amount of principal we're paying down is $1.5 million. We're actually expending $1.6 million to take care of some accrued interest and pay off some of the soft costs. So $1.5 million in principal will be defeased at the cost of about $1.65 million to the district. What happens there on August 27th, that will fund, and we will send that $1.65 million into an escrow account. And then as bonds become available to be paid off or called, Dan and his team will call those funds and make that payment and get it accomplished. It looks like the schedule is between now and 2024 until this 1.5 million in bonds are completely paid down. These bonds that we're paying off are from the 2012 bonds, and I had to think to myself, well, we didn't have a bond in 2012, but that was the refinancing of bonds prior to that. So we're taking a shot at some of those bonds as we move forward. And the really exciting thing is after this defeasance and the payments made, we're gonna inch that total debt of the district below $30 million and be set up very well. Part of the reason we're doing it is set up to do another defeasance next spring and take another shot at paying down some debt and look at hopefully, that May bond election and give us that flexibility as we move into that. So it's a great opportunity to have interest expense savings for the taxpayers and create more capacity and flexibility in our bond program. Any questions?
I would just say that, we're doing exactly what we've told the voters during all of our presentations. The board in late August is gonna vote to lower our tax rate for the 5th year in a row, and we've said we were gonna have the lowest tax rate possible while planning for the future and be aggressive in paying off our debt. And so this will keep us at, having the second lowest student to debt ratio among area school districts, below $30 million of debt. Just a great story. To those people that complain about debt, we've been very aggressive in paying off debt as early as possible.
I move to approve and adopt the presented resolution providing for the defeasance and redemption of certain currently outstanding district obligations and delegating the authority to effectuate matters to named district officials, which is in the resolution.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to adopt the presented resolution providing for the defeasance and redemption of certain currently outstanding district obligations and delegating the authority to effectuate matters to the named district officials. Any more comments or questions? If none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There's nothing on the backside of this.
That is done. But if you'll recall, this meeting was only gonna have like one agenda item, right?